Today we are thinking about time. Making time is much different from simply taking time. For Americans, time is like a slice of pie that you consume, you take it. For much of the world, however, time is like a pie that you bake from the ingredients that are available at the moment. Let's call this the time problem difference. For you, it's a discrete commodity, like the slice of pie. For others, it's who you encounter and how the day unfolds. For you, time is a sequence arising from a plan headed to an endpoint. For others, it's an event involving the people who show up, the resources that are available, and everything important to the quality of life. Well, here's an example. You can't expect Mr. Call to miss his son's 14th birthday party and still be a loyal employee. You must expect yourself as his manager to think like Mr. Call, anticipate his son's 14th birthday party, and build your production schedule around that. Insane, you say? No, just different, and maybe even better, certainly more realistic. When you arrived in Myanmar, Call was the point supervisor in a small upstart widget factory. He seemed more dedicated than efficient, and production could barely keep up with marketing. Your input and coaching streamlined everything, quadrupled output, and sales tripled soon after. Call got better. Call got good. And then one day came the big order, and you saw that production needed to go into overdrive. What to do? Time to take time on Saturdays. So you think. Aren't you actually taking time from Saturday? You will run the little factory 6 days a week for a couple of months. That was August. Right away you tell Call, and he replies, I see. Around that date, you barely recall, but now you do recall. This is like being at your own trial or part of an inquisition run by your wife. Here's what you recall. Around that date, Call mentioned in passing to you that it was his son's birthday party the first weekend in September. You thought, oh, this is a nice thing, but you gave it no time. Notice now that you are barely listening and that you had taken Call's comment as just that, a piece of information in passing. This is what you would have done with any American so-called friend who's a coworker. You'd say something like, hey, Charlie, that's great. Sounds like fun. But for Call, despite your sense of wanting to be his equal, his buddy, and his non-directive coach with some excellent expert suggestions, you are, in his eyes, a very respected boss, an American no less, and one to whom honor and deference is due. You aren't going to change that in his way of thinking, not anytime soon. There's a certain formality, not a casual informality, even though there's a very high and growing loyalty on Call's part. That kind of thinking he has puts him at a distance from you in terms of work role, but also, in his mind, you are also obligated to be caring about more than just his work role. He has a life, and you have become part of his whole quality of life. You have a significant role as boss, leader, patron, overseer, wise American coach. Your role is making time. You are shaping his world, not just taking 5 days a week and now Saturdays. He has a God-given 168 hours a week. If you're merely taking 40 hours, then you aren't doing your job, the job he expects you to do of helping him have a quality life. In fact, by taking 40 hours, you may be making 128 hours very stressful. This is not about planning Mr. Call's family life or evening activities. It's about listening to the heartbeat of his life. Ka-thump, ka-thump, ka-thump. You can't just steal 40 increasingly efficient hours a week and then take another 10 on Saturday. You can't take time because Call has no notion of owning time. Call comes to you on the 23rd of August, knowing your intention to roll out a modified line and ramp up production starting in a week. He lets you know that Mrs. Call's brother and her family are coming from Kuala Lumpur for the big party and says they will be having the special family curry you enjoyed so much the first time you visited their home. You say, that sounds wonderful, but still you have no clue that he won't be able to work the first weekend in September, or that you've just received a full-on invitation to the event of the year. For Call, life comes at him. He receives and owns what God gives him each day. The party, like a bar mitzvah, was inevitable. Call is not a shaper. Neither he nor his culture are risk takers. They don't take anything. They go with the flow. Call is a recipient of time, an owner, a manager of what comes along, and now you are his big brother co-owner. However, if you are not in his life and situation, you're walking alongside him as the days go by, then you're more like a meteor, a piece of shrapnel falling from the sky. He finds it, and he has to decide what to do with it. You become a tool, an artifact, an issue, an intrusion. You're a time taker. You think you own the hours, especially 9 to 5. No, let's not go that route. Let's help Call make the most of his days. You don't want his hard-working efforts to be slowed because you only think about 40 to 50 hours of production. You don't want your relationship to be skewed because you can't listen or read between the lines. You don't want to have his extended family remember Saturday the 6th of September as the day you took Call out of his son's life and took him away to make widgets. Find a way to make time to celebrate. And by the way, no need for public relations or announcements. Everyone, family, coworkers, community will know what you did. They live in a collectivist culture. When they reply by email, they reply all. No secrets. Call is your honored supervisor, and you are his honored coach or manager or boss, and a partner in time. By learning to make time, you will be part of the culture. Showing that you understand what counts in life there is what counts in business there. Just as inevitably, Call will help increase production. Okay, so let's review this case one more time in sort of a different way. Bud Jones from Staten Island, New York, is coaching a supervisor of a small widget factory in Myanmar that exports parts for an espresso machine made in Norway. Jones wasn't really listening to Call's initial respectful reply. I see. When he said Saturday production would have to begin soon. When Jones asked directly, "Can you come in on Saturday?" Call then made a second comment. He clearly replied, "Yes, I think so." This shows a marked increase in his verbal definitiveness, but what he really means is, "I don't think so." You have to learn when maybe means no in cultures that can't say no. These cultures seek harmony over clarity. After a year and a half working in Call's culture, Jones should have known that Call is not American, and cannot, flat out, like a good New York boy, say, "No, can't do that, boss." In addition to being generally obtuse and informal, ask his wife, Jones has output figures on his mind. The fact is, Jones should be part of Call's bigger world and must have that on his mind. Call does not put a fence around his workday and separate it from his life the way Bud Jones does. Bud Jones needs to rethink his own role in Call's life. Bud Jones needs to take time to make time function for himself the way it does in Call's culture, even if that's un-American. Well, how does time function in one village in Fiji? A visitor asked, "When are the stores open?" Well, the answer, when the doors are open. The stores are open when the owners have something to sell, and open doors indicate that. Some days they're open, some days they're not. What does this mean? The circumstance or context rules the day, not the clock. Well, there I was walking down the street in London when a Pakistani acquaintance saw me. He waved and crossed the street and said he was on his way to a job interview. He insisted that we have a cup of tea, which we did, and he told me how important this interview was to him. And I knew that because we'd been helping him with some housing and some temporary needs, but we continued to have tea. Similarly, a few days later, I saw Mr. Aziz again and chatted, and I was on my way to see a half a dozen people who were gathered for a meeting I was leading. And as we chatted, Mr. Aziz suggested that we have tea. I told him I was meeting these people. I was very sorry, but I had to get there because I was leading the meeting. Aziz said to me, "Well, but Mr. Rick, the other day I took time from my busy appointment to have tea with you. I insist." Nevertheless, we didn't have tea that day. I learned that there are no brief interactions in this culture. To spend time with our friends meant to spend the day. including lunch and dinner, and then sometimes to be asked to sleep over. The art of conversation is not lost among many cultures, where people will happily talk at length or sit in silence together at length. As I did with 15 Sikh men in a large room, we're just sitting around, sipping drinks and just sitting. The women are gathered in the other room and we're just sitting, the American and the guys in their local dress turbans. It can make Americans uneasy. In my head, I'm asking, what are they waiting for? What will we do next? Always wanting to move ahead to the future. What should I be saying? And believing isn't easy either. It takes a while to accomplish. About the workplace. As Steers and others in their book, Management Across Cultures, by the way, the full text of this is available online. There tends to be a greater integration or acceptance of personal relationships intertwined with work activities. Expectations are that task time is flexible, deadlines are often missed, and progress is reported face-to-face. Well, more than one Guatemalan factory making locally handcrafted shoes for sale in the USA has had to close when demand went viral in the USA because it couldn't meet production demands. Increasing work hours or even efficiency would mean asking workers to trade time on relationships. It would ask them to value making more money than to value making enough to get by on, which is their traditional value. How will you deal with this? First, you must make time. Is it confusing? Is it time-consuming? But the tool for making time is taking your time and giving it. Give it to learn. Give it because people want you more than your skills. Give it because you're networking at the highest intensity level. Give your time because it's expected. Give your time because there, in the other culture, it's not really your time. It's shared time. In desperately poor Swaziland, where my wife helped arrange for delivery of a container full of clothing and shoes and coats and medical supplies desperately needed, their leading pastor pulled her aside and said, "Thank you very much. This is wonderful. But what we appreciate and need most is that you came to be with us." Sound familiar? With us. Time is a starting place. Dean Allen Foster in Bargaining Across Borders, another great book, suggests this: in a traditional Arab culture, only Allah knows the future. Therefore, to plan too much is foolish at best and presumes the right of human beings to interfere in a realm best left to Allah. Life is too unpredictable, too unknowable. There always can be an unexpected delay, an unanticipated problem, a higher priority to alter one's intention to arrive on time, to carry out something that might be planned. Why emphasize punctuality? What happens when you put the time problem difference in a business meeting? Here's what you may perceive. Key people are late, and yet it's no problem for the locals. Your essential topics, sequenced to get to a conclusion, are replaced by other topics. Discussion meanders, and people talk simultaneously, so that at the end of the day, important points may seem unresolved and new points may have been added. Note this: participants in the meeting may not place their faith in tomorrow like you do. Tomorrow is suspect. Getting on with the show can be a dangerous thing. One must not rush too fast into it. Americans may believe in the virtues of tomorrow, but other culture people are looking for quality of life in the here and now. You do not need to set aside your drivenness, your efficiency, your capacity to get it done. You must be you. However, if you're truly smart, you'll learn about time. Pace yourself and learn. With those from the other culture, bake the pie slowly. Making time is much different from simply taking time.